and welcome to this jobs.ac.uk webinar focused on careers in IT for those interested in HE. Today we're looking at careers in universities and giving you an idea of what kind of role, what kind of IT roles are available in higher education. So my name is Tara Lamplow. I'm currently Head of IT Business Partnering within the University of Birmingham. And this is a role that's kind of a bridge or a translator between people that want technology and people who deliver the technology. And this is, I've been in the university for almost 20 years now in lots of different roles, lots of different job titles, working both outside of IT department and inside the IT department. And now I will introduce you to the rest of the panel today. First, I'll go over to Geetan.
Good afternoon. My name is Ketan Parikh. I'm the head of technical specialists at UCL. My role is to manage a team of technical specialists in the field of desktop, print, AV, and network connectivity. I suppose the focus for our team is to take a step back from the normal reactive stuff that the operational team would do and focus more on problem management, continuous improvement, innovation, just generally working proactively to make our services better. That's me.
Thank you. And next it's to Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire Henderson. I'm the head of the project management office within our IT department at Durham University. Been working at Durham for 4 years across a number of different areas. Currently lead a team of project managers, and we deliver a portfolio of around 60 projects, varying in size and budget. Some business led, some IT specific. And we work across the university with a number of stakeholders and all of the teams within the IT department to deliver the projects.
And Rob, next.
Hi, my name's Rob. My job title is Senior Specialist IT Manager. I run a small specialist team of specialist computer people within the department, so we're dealing with the nitty-gritty of running a computing department rather than the wider university. But I've worked in universities now for 25 years. I've worked at 5 different universities, so I've got a fairly good experience of the universities, and before that I worked in the private sector for about 6 years.
Thank you. And Sandra, over to you.
Hi, I'm Sandra Stevenson and I'm the Business Systems Manager at the University of Derby. My team focus on supporting the university's applications, including our VLE library systems, document management systems and our staff intranet.
Thank you very much. If you're watching live today and you want to ask any of us a question, please use the chat box on the side of the screen to ask your question and we'll see what we can do to answer those. So we'll kick off with the first question. How can I make the leap from an IT role in industry into higher education? What are the key qualifications, skills and experience needed? Claire, I think over to you first.
So I think for me, it's quite crucial to say that experience of HE is not essential, and it's not something that we look to have as an essential criteria. I think that we're very accepting of kind of best practice from other industries and interested in how people are doing things elsewhere. So just because you're not in HE now, that can be seen positively rather than negatively, I think, in a lot of situations. And we accept a variety of skills and they don't have to necessarily, as long as they can be generalised to some of the criteria that we put forward in the job specifications, they don't have to exactly match. And I think that's probably something that people struggle with when they're coming from other sectors. I think the key difference for us is the variety that you get at a university. So at Durham, we have kind of Linux, Windows, we have business systems, everything in a single place. And the variety of skills that we tend to look for is greater than often in industry, I think. So for me, it's about showing how you have potential. Because one thing that universities are very, very good at is looking for potential and then learning and development to build people into their roles. So I wouldn't be put off by a particularly ambitious job specification. I would absolutely think about how you could generalise your current skills.
And Rob, next.
Yes, I agree with all Claire's points. I write job descriptions like I'm sure all the panelists do, and I always put far too many things in the job description. I read and I think nobody exists that can do that job. So yeah, don't be put off by that. Again, I'd echo what Claire said. I think there's two sides to working in a university. There's the corporate. It's a university is a large corporation, so we've got huge Windows, distributed Windows environments, but there's lots of weird and wonderful machinery in universities as well that are very specialized, and everything in between. So you could land in the corporate support section in a university and it would feel like working in a corporation, but you might end up in a role like mine where you've got people using brain scanners and all kinds of weird and wonderful technology, and you have to be flexible and be able to think on your feet. I think the key skill, again, as Claire said, no one expects you to be a super person. You know, there's you're coming into a broadly nurturing environment where learning is fundamental to the product. So equally, you know, you can be forgiven for not knowing things and encouraged to learn. My key tip, I think, from going from the private sector to HE is it's a very different environment. It can often feel different. People's priorities are slightly different. It's a good environment. I prefer it personally. But I remember the first 3 months when I moved from the private sector, I was walking around with my jaw hanging open because I just didn't get it. But I was also very aware that it was a very nice environment as well.
Thank you. Over to Sandra.
Hi, for me, I think working in higher education gives you an opportunity, perhaps in a way that you don't get in the corporate environment. We don't isolate people into one skill area. So when you see a job advertised in higher education, it's probably asking for somebody that can do Linux and Windows. And don't be afraid to reply to that job advert. If you've only got Windows skills or you've only got Linux skills, you should still apply. And what it will do is give you the opportunity to broaden yourself into the other area, if that's what you want. Higher education is a fantastic opportunity to broaden your skill set. And certainly if you wanted to change specialisms, higher education is a wonderful place to do that.
Thank you very much. The next question. What are the main benefits of working in higher education compared to other sectors? Is your role rewarding, meaningful, and if so, why? First of all, we're going to Keaton.
Thank you. I suppose the biggest thing for me is the altruistic feeling of working in higher education. By supporting our students, our academics, our researchers, I think we play a small part in shaping the leaders of tomorrow in some of the major scientific breakthroughs that happen. Take recent example of COVID. All of us know what we are going through, right? And the contribution of higher education towards fighting COVID has been incredible. Whether it is vaccine efforts, breathing aid devices, data collection analysis, or whether it's membership of scientific advisory groups, higher education has played a big role in the fight against COVID. And I can proudly say that by supporting academics and researchers during this crisis, I have played a small part, but a part nonetheless in the fight against COVID. So that for me is a big rewarding thing.
Thank you. Over to Claire next.
So I think I've already mentioned the kind of variety of technologies, but I think that given the type of environment that you're working in at a university, the ability to innovate and to be given some room to pick up things that you're interested in and maybe do something a little different is greater than in a lot of industries. And because there's not the same drive for profits, I think there's sometimes an ability to look at something that's a bit different and take it in a direction, and there's a tolerance of that. And I think that also leads into, I know Sandra mentioned there, a kind of developing into different roles. And I think I've had 3 different roles in my 4 years at Durham, and they give you the opportunity to maybe move into a role that you haven't necessarily got the exact skills for, but is a development opportunity, will support you in that. And I think that the fact that it's a learning environment does change the attitude around allowing people to grow into roles and to take a step up and be promoted into roles, or at least to be seconded to slightly different roles. But I think one of the main things for me is that you feel like you're working for almost a bit of a greater good. Working for a university, you see a point to it. Some of the research is world leading and has a real benefit, and you can see that, but you also get that kind of team spirit. If you look at COVID, our department has really pulled together. We've worked odd hours and pushed forward to get the whole university on working online off-site, and I think that pulling together and understanding that it's really for the students and the academics is something that you don't always get elsewhere.
Thank you. Sandra, over to you.
I've always thought about education as being, it's vocational. You work in education because you believe in the value of education. And that's something I've always believed in. And as Keaton's already said, for me, I keep a VLE working. I help enable the university to teach online. This year, that online teaching could educate somebody that becomes the next doctor that cures COVID. And that has to be a massive way of looking at it. What's my part in that? I might as well be the cleaner emptying the bin. I'm not giving them knowledge, but the value that I add to that process is tremendous. In the same way that the cleaner emptying the bin provides that enormous service to the rest of the institution. And it is that value that the small part that you play can have such long-lasting consequences, you know, in a positive way. I also think that in working in education, you rarely feel isolated. You're rarely given something to work on by yourself. There's always somebody else to talk to. There's students to reach out for. There's a buzz about the building, about the atmosphere. Working in the university it's enthralling and lively, but it's also technically challenging. You have to use all of your skills and all of your nous and all of your common sense. And it's just brilliant.
Thank you. Over to Rob.
When I worked in the private sector before I worked in universities, I worked on a gigantic project to develop a digital mobile phone back in the day, and it cost millions of dollars. And we came up with a good solution. And at the end of the project, we were all exhausted. And I sat down just to reflect on it, and I thought, actually, all I've done is I've enabled a company to make item X for this much money, and then sell it for more money to somebody else. And it left me with a very empty feeling. And I thought, really, is that all that was for? I don't get that in university. As the other speakers have said, it's really all about a greater good, a lively environment. There's no secrecy. Again, when I came from the private sector into universities, you never tell anybody anything in the private sector. You don't tell your competitors how you did X, Y, and Z. That would be, you know, suicide. But the first thing you do in universities is you talk to other people at other universities and share your thoughts. And you have this huge, what we call a community of practice, where you're never stuck with something. You can call somebody at any other university and the chances are they can probably help you with something. So the private sector is faster, there's more money, it can sometimes be exciting, but I think it's soulless. And you do have that people-centric outcomes in universities all the time. And I think somebody else mentioned as well, there's a higher tolerance for failure in universities because we're a nurturing learning organisation. So if you make a mistake, you're not just fired. You know, there's a reflective process that goes on, and hopefully you learn from it. And also, yes, I've worked in 5 universities and done different things in each of those universities. There's a degree of flexibility about what you do and how you build on your skills. So yeah, if you know, it's a much more, for me, it's just a much more, it feels like a good outcome every day at the end of the day.
Thank you. Next question. What are the standout development opportunities you've had in higher education and how have they benefited you? First of all, we're going over to Sandra.
So I'm just going to touch on something that Rob's just talked about. For me, one of the best things about working in a university is not just working at a university, but all the different applications, certainly that my team use. They all have communities that sit with them that belong to the education sector. And you go out and you get involved in those communities. Some of them have user groups, well, certainly that used to meet in person regularly, less so now. There's a lot more online meetings over the last 6 months or so, as with many other things. But you know, there used to be things that were called things like SharePoint Saturdays, where people used to go and meet in a pub and sit and have a meal and do things like that. I've been to many conferences over the years. For me, one of my best experiences was when I was very fortunate to get sent to New Orleans to a conference, and I was sat in the audience in front of a group of Americans who were talking about the piece of software that we use called Blackboard, and my name actually got read out as an example of a really good way to do something. And without thinking, I just went, oh, that was me, you know, as you do. And the next thing that I knew, I was up front, centre stage, with 200 people looking at me, demonstrating something that we built. And at the time, it was absolutely nerve-wracking, but there was no time to think about it. I got on and I did it. and I've been doing it ever since. And I just think I would probably not have been that fortunate if I'd have not been in the education sector.
Thank you. Over to Rob.
Yikes, 200 people just like that. Yeah, I'd echo all of those sentiments. In fact, yeah, I've had the good fortune to go to conferences around the world and speak at them about the software I'm using. I've even been invited by companies in the private sector to talk about products that I've implemented in the university, and got some lovely trips to Rome and Milan and places like that. But I think the standout thing for me, as well as punching away at a computer all day, I've tended to drift slightly into the academic role as well. So I supervise master's students, for instance, where I work now. I look after their projects and help them direct them. And I've written papers as well. I've been encouraged to write papers and present them at conferences. Again, that's going back to this open environment where you share expertise with people. I even co-wrote a book as well, which is something I never imagined I would ever do in my life, which was a really wonderful experience, really interesting experience. So yeah, it's a great environment.
Thank you. Over to Keith.
So in terms of training, I have been on leadership courses. I have been on conferences in the UK, in Amsterdam. I have done IT and Six Sigma courses. I've been involved in numerous projects in the last 3 years. But most important of all, higher education IT function has a variety of departments ranging from service desk to cybersecurity to software development, research IT. I have personally had the opportunity to experience audiovisual desktop networks all in the space of 3 years. So I think if you're keen, there are lots of options and opportunities for you to shape your career in the way that you want.
Thank you. And I think I'm going to answer this one as well. So I would echo kind of what's been said previously about the sector being quite friendly and quite helpful to swap ideas with each other using similar services and similar software. Obviously we're competitive around, we want students, but we're not kind of protective and secretive, and we can share things with the community. I was fortunate enough to have a study tour in Malaysia at other UK universities that had overseas campuses when we were looking to set up our own Birmingham overseas campus, and visiting those campuses. How have they set up their IT? How does it relate to the IT on the UK campus, and finding out how all that works and bringing that knowledge back was really useful. I've also been very lucky to go to a conference in New Orleans, so it seems like it's the in place to be. And that was the professional conference for business relationship managers, the role that I'm in, and it's not necessarily something that every year I'd be lucky enough to go to, but there is a group called UCISA who have a bursary scheme that sponsor people in UK universities, and so kind of that helped to get me over to the conference in New Orleans. So definitely lots of opportunities if you're looking out for them and if you want them. Next question. How does an IT role in higher education compare to one in the commercial sector, and what transferable skills are needed for an IT role in HE?
I probably touched on some of the key factors. It's a very different environment. People in universities work very hard. It's the same as the private sector. People are they believe in what they're doing, so they're highly motivated. But it is a very different environment. There's a degree of individualism in universities, I think it's fair to say. A professor who is the sort of sacred cow of a university, the sort of successful person, has achieved that success by being very focused. It's necessary to be an expert in a particular field. So you deal with people with particular personality types, I think. And again, the environment is more caring towards people and less concerned about money. So flexibility is key. You have to be ready ready for a real change in culture. But I can assure you, in my opinion, it's a nice change. Again, as the other guys have said, there are standard corporate products within universities, so that's very similar to industry, but there's lots of quirky equipment. To give you an example, just today, my job sort of jobs today, I had a meeting about creating a Hadoop cluster, which is a fairly complex piece of software. I had a problem with a guy trying to get his computer to run a brain scanner, which was very glitchy, and it's got all kinds of problems, I have to talk to the company to find out how the heck it's supposed to work. And I had a guy's computer, his clock wasn't working on his laptop. So, you know, that's the kind of thing you can expect in a typical day. In my role, certainly anyway, there's a lot of stuff going on. As regards qualifications, experience, I think we do admire the same things that are admired in the private sector. But again, as has been said before, there's more flexibility in HE. People don't expect you to be, you know everything. Being flexibility and enthusiasm is important as well.
Thank you very much. Next question is, what are the main ways in which coronavirus pandemic has changed your roles? And Keaton, we're over to you first.
So with every other industry out there, remote working has become the norm for us. But we've also had to respond quite quickly to many things. So, for example, rolling out something like Microsoft Teams as our primary communication and collaboration solution, setting up a laptop loan service very quickly for those who don't have a facility at home, setting up a remote laptop repair service while ensuring COVID safety, standing up virtual cluster rooms for students. Biggest thing probably is organizing and shifting what was traditionally a campus-based face-to-face teaching into a hybrid model with a primary focus on online teaching. In fact, the last 8 months have probably been the busiest that we have ever been, but it has also been incredibly rewarding.
Thank you. Over to Sandra.
It's very hard not to just repeat what Keaton's just said, to be honest, and I suspect the others will have the same problem when you respond. I mean, working from home is just, I mean, you can probably see we're all sat at home, whether we've got blurred backgrounds or not, and it has become normal. So as daily check-ins, what used to be, you walk into the office and say hi and people say hi as you come in. You now have regular meetings where you do those conversations, which is a little bit odd, but it does work and you get used to it. One of the weird things that I've noticed me and my team do is we will start the conversation, we might talk for 5 minutes and then we'll just all go quiet and we'll just all still be on the line, but nobody says anything. And then 5 minutes later, somebody chirps up and says something. It's a bit odd, but actually it works really well. And we've also seen the same increase in workload. We've had to roll out innovative solutions that the university has needed, working out where students are, where they've been in the buildings, so that we know, we can contact them should we have an outbreak. And everything's needed to be done at quite short notice. It's a very evolving situation. We all know that at any point in time we could be asked to close a university down, or we could be told that they're all open and back to normal. You've got some split teaching, so you've got part on-site, part off-site that has to be facilitated. The training of academics to ensure that they know how to use all the technology. We're quite fortunate at Derby. We've been using a lot of the technology that we've needed for a long time. We've had teams in for probably a year, 18 months prior to this. We also use Collaborate as one of our teaching technologies. We've been doing lecture capture for a while, but it's still picking the pace up on that and making sure that it's all being done in the right way so that the students are getting the best benefit. And that's the important thing. And I could talk for forever on this, so I'm going to shut up there and hand it over to Claire.
Over to Claire.
I think historically, like a lot of different industries, universities have really been primarily site-based, and I think it's very different both in terms of for staff themselves and also for managers, because it's much more flexible working from home. It allows that kind of work-life balance and working things around commitments that you've got at home. And I think it builds trust as long as you've got the right behaviours, but certainly it's not been really very widely accepted in a lot of areas to work primarily from home. And I think it is a bit of a shift, and figuring out how to support your team, support others in the department during that time is quite critical. So I know Sandra mentioned daily check-ins. I do a daily check-in with my team. I actually probably see more of them than I did in the office because we'd be disappearing off to different meetings all the time, and we make an effort to catch up, see how everybody's doing, but also catch up on kind of a project by project basis. And I think that's been really beneficial. And I think it's built the trust for the team. They feel as if they're more trusted. From the role that I'm doing in the project management space, the university has had to look at how we prioritise projects, and the priorities for projects and initiatives has changed hugely during the COVID pandemic. So flexibility in that way has certainly been a primary focus for me. We've flipped resources from here to there, but I think it's allowed kind of a reprioritization exercise is probably what I'd say.
Thank you. I'd echo quite a lot of what has already been said here. Working from home initially was an interesting challenge with homeschooling and everything being manically busy, trying to juggle the two. Obviously spending a lot of time on video conferencing calls back to back, and getting used to that being slightly different from campus-based university, being able to walk between meetings and have that little bit of a break between each meeting, and suddenly that break time has disappeared. And also my team are also looking at kind of supporting communications and well-being within the IT department itself, and making sure that we don't have people that are feeling very isolated and alone kind of when they're in the working from home. So we've been doing quite a lot in the space of using tools like Teams and kind of doing more social stuff to make sure that everyone has a way of kind of checking in with people regularly, and they're not feeling like they're just kind of sat in their little four walls, never speaking to anyone. So we've done a lot in that space as well, just to make sure that kind of we're keeping kind of people's spirits up really when it's been a very rocky year for quite a lot of people. Okay, now when the next question is, how does the university support your well-being, learning and development and work-life balance? I think we've got Sandra answering this one.
So I guess my university is probably the same as most other universities. We have a very proactive stance on certainly staff development. We've got a comprehensive staff development programme. The list of things you can do on our staff development programme it's enormous. I've got a chap that's on my team that's looking to retire. There's a whole set of programmes and pieces that you can go through around how retirement would look and preparing yourself for it, just to give one example. There are, you know, all kinds, all the way through all walks of life. There are all of those different areas that you can tap into. We've had regular staff briefings throughout lockdown, and they continue. And we get constant reminders about taking proper breaks. One of the things that we've noticed is that when you get sat at your computer at home, especially if you live by yourself, although it does affect others, you tend not to take proper breaks. You just sit there and work and work and work. And it's so important to be reminded to take proper breaks. Just because you're at home, you're not expected to be there 24/7. You should take breaks, look after yourself. You should take your holidays, even if you can't go away, because it's still important to have that mental rest. We do, as you would expect, have an employee assistance programme that you can run for confidential support if you want any kind of help. I suspect most employers of any size have those nowadays. And I think the big thing for me about working at a university is there's always somebody there to talk to, whether it's your manager or your colleague or somebody you bump into when you have coffee. There's always somebody about. And one of the things I've kind of got into the habit of doing over lockdown is actually just randomly ringing people up, which is a bit weird, but you no longer bump into them at the kettle or at the coffee shop. So you have to do that random phone call. I haven't spoken to such and such in a while. And once they get what you're doing, they're kind of really up for it and they massively enjoy it.
Thank you very much. I might steal that idea. What has been your career highlight whilst working in higher education and why? And we'll go over to Sandra first.
So I'm going to pick a work thing, and I think my favourite thing has to be mentoring placement students. We've had a couple of them in over the years, and it's such an opportunity to mould the next generation. And it's not about moulding them in your image, it's about helping them to grow and understand where they might want to go. And I've had people in my team who, it was quite obvious that my team was not the area of expertise in IT they were going to go into, but that didn't stop them having the opportunity to grow and develop themselves personally and be ready to move into the area that they did. I was able to facilitate them with some time, spending a few days with the team where in an area so they could try out different areas across IT. And I think being able to do that and work with placement students it's a fantastic opportunity that you might not necessarily get in the commercial world in the same way.
Thank you very much. And Rob, over to you.
Yeah, despite never having made it to New Orleans, I have had highlights. Yeah, it's the people-centered thing as well. I mean, going back over the COVID comments earlier, you know, I've had people contacting me. We've handed out hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of laptops. Just got to figure out how to get them back now. But you know, we've you know, people have contacted me and said, "Thanks, you've really saved. I'm doing my final year. I'm really stressed. You know, what you've done has helped me finish my project. I opened up computers on the campus remotely so students could get onto the expensive licensed software we can only run on campus, and that allowed them to finish their projects when they were really worried that they weren't going to be able to complete their degrees." And so that's a highlight, and it's that general feeling that every day you're helping people to be, you know, to grow into the people they're going to become, and that whatever you did today, the chances are that's probably, you know, helped somebody, you know, grow into the next cure for cancer, to find the next cure for cancer or something like that. I mean, that's, you can't buy that. It's fantastic.
Thank you very much. I think my career highlight to date would be when the university decided it was going to open a campus in Dubai, and the director of IT whispered in my ear, "Do you want to be leading on the IT systems for the Dubai campus? We haven't announced we're setting up a campus yet." And he said, "That can be your role to make sure that we've got all the IT systems ready and good to go for that campus." We'd never done it before. We'd never set up an overseas campus before. There was no template to follow. I had to kind of work it out as I went along, and it was a really fun project to work on. It was a massive project for the university, a really good team of people to work with, and we've opened the campus now, and we've got students there, and they're using the systems that kind of I helped to put in place. So it's quite satisfying when you see kind of the end result of that, and can think that I played a small part in that. So it's good. Okay, next question is, what do you recommend an early postdoc do in order to network with professionals in non-academic roles and in the IT industry? Let me just scroll. On LinkedIn, I have found it easy to connect, but no one wanted to network and have a conversation. Any tips and advice would be very helpful. So, Rob, I think this one's you.
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. I know I get contacted a lot through LinkedIn and other things, and students asking me for my opinion on things, and I'm just super busy, and it's very difficult to carve out time to answer all those questions. I think regarding the private sector, I think my earlier points count as well. Of course, it's the nature of the private sector as people are quite secretive about what they do. They don't want to give secrets away. It's very difficult in a private company to go to your boss and say, "I want to talk to a student about something," and the boss goes, "Oh, what's in it for us?" and there isn't anything, you know. So that's always going to be tricky. The only way that I know that it works is if you're after information, for instance, if you like to pick people's brains, as the saying goes, it's quite useful to get hold of a key person in HR, maybe in a company, to get them to possibly speak for you too. So a private company might want to go to HR first, explain what it is you'd like to know about, and keep it brief and keep it focused. And something that I find people respond to positively in the environment I'm in, that if you have questions you want to ask people, make it quick, essentially. Perhaps if you have specific questions, just an online form. If you want to have a general chat, keep it very specific to a subject, and just be flexible about when you meet. But yes, it's difficult. Yeah, despite the general feeling of wanting to share in universities, you know, people are busy with their work schedule as well. So sometimes it's difficult, but it does depend on what you want to know, I guess.
Thank you very much. Next question is quite a long one, so I'll try my best. Will a master's degree in computer networking and cybersecurity help secure a job in the IT industry in the UK? Does race and ethnicity affect your ability and eligibility to start a career in IT? And if inexperienced industrially, what will it take employers to give a new graduate with a master's degree from an African origin an opportunity to get employment in the IT industry? I think Keaton was going to respond to this one.
Yeah, it's a long question. I think there are three different questions within one question. So I will start by answering the first one, which is around the masters. I can't give advice on whether you should do a master's or not, whether it's going to be useful or not. I think it depends on the role you're applying for and the requirements of the role. I have done lots of recruitment myself, and while I value professional qualifications, that's not all that matters to me. I look at the experience for the role I'm recruiting in. I look for soft skills, and in many cases, I probably put more value on the soft skills than I do on the technical skills. So I think the question about masters is quite a difficult one to answer. It really depends on the role you are applying for. In terms of your second question around race and ethnicity, I mean, look at me, right? I'm from an ethnic background myself. I was successful in finding a role at UCL. I put a lot of effort in making sure my application stood out. I prepped really hard for my interviews because it was a job that I definitely wanted. But that's what it eventually comes down to. I think all higher education institutions are focused on diversity, equality, inclusion. I think it's a big part of our culture. So I wouldn't worry about the race and ethnicity piece. Just focus on making sure that your application stands out and you are prepping well for your interviews. Your focus should be on being the best person for the role, and just forget about the race and ethnicity. That doesn't matter, especially in higher education institutions. And finally, about inexperience. So I think there are various ways of getting your foot through the door in higher education institutions. We regularly recruit apprentices. You could try that route. You can try applying for an entry-level role and work your way up the organization, like many people have done. You could try contracting or getting a temporary role with us and build your networks and hence get your foot through the door. So I think there are multiple ways that you can get entry into higher education without having the necessary experience. I think various people on the panel have said before, right, that we are quite a nurturing, we have a very nurturing environment. So we don't always look for you having every single thing that we want for in a role. You know, we are happy to accept 60%, 70%, and then develop you the rest of the way through. That's it.
Thank you very much. And next question, how willing in the current climate would you consider any potential applicants who have technical competence or background applying for IT roles in HE? Any hints or tips? Rob, you're up first.
I just agree completely with what Ketan just said in the last question. I think flexibility, soft skills are really important. Anyone can accumulate qualifications. It doesn't necessarily mean that that you're a person that can work well in an organisation. I personally, when I'm recruiting, look for people who fit into the team that I have and have the people skills to do that and to deal with all the incredible range of people that they'll encounter in a university. As long as you have the basic skills, I think that's fine. Yeah, and it's your character, I think, is the most important thing, assuming you have the sort of basic qualifications. And again, as has been said many times, we're a nurturing organisation. We don't take people on, expect them to be able to do everything straight away. That's something that can be worked into your working experience.
Thank you. Claire, over to you.
So I think linked into this question, HE recruitment hasn't really stopped as a result of COVID in my experience, and I think it will start to ramp up as the true effects of COVID on the IT space are felt. So IT is becoming ever more critical, certainly at our institution, and I know at other universities. I think there will be new projects, new innovations, and they're all going to require candidates. So I don't think there should be this illusion that this sector is not recruiting at the moment. I think you should be aware that we are and we will be in the coming months. So I think it's about ensuring you can demonstrate how you fit the role. So when you're looking at that person specification, you've got essential skills. You may not have to meet them, as Ketan said, 100%, but demonstrate how you could meet them, or you've got some experience that's relevant. Because if you've got those essential skills in that job specification, it's very hard if there's kind of nothing in the box that links to that to get through to the interview stage. And I think it's sometimes about talking through your experience and specifically your role in a situation and what you've actually done rather than what the team have done or the organisation have done, because that always resonates a little bit more. And I also think it's useful to get in touch directly if there's a contact name. So we always give a key contact in the organisation. If you're not sure whether it's the right role or whether you qualify, have a conversation, maybe get in touch via email, and then organise a phone call to have a chat and understand what the role's like and whether there is any flexibility and what opportunities there are going to be, because I always find that's a really valuable conversation, whether it leads to a new application or it leads to somebody not applying who didn't really want the role. Regardless, it certainly helps when Rob's saying about fitting in with the team. I think that chat gives you a little bit more of an ability to look at whether that person will suit the role and suit the team that you're recruiting them into, and let you think about other opportunities that may be coming up in the organisation in different teams that person may be more suitable for.
Thank you. Ketan.
So in terms of opportunities, Claire already said that, I don't think the recruitment has actually slowed down. There are lots of job opportunities in higher education right now. Just look at jobs.ac.uk, right? I mean, there are nearly 100 roles open right now, ranging from support roles to software development, all sorts of stuff. I think the focus, I think if we talk about hints and tips, I would have a couple. So the first is make sure that you focus on making sure your application is well formed and you are well prepped for your interview. One of the biggest tips I would give is that when you're preparing for your interview, keep the students, the researchers, and the academics at the front of all your preparation, because at the end of the day, they are the most important stakeholders in the higher education institution.
Thank you. We've had a new question come in while we've been on, and that is, how do I get work placement or training while I am studying? And I think, Ketan, you were going to answer this one.
Yes, so this is I think different higher education institutions do different things. So I already say, if I look at UCL specifically, so there's something that I do specifically in my teams. We recruit actively studying students to do room checks for us first thing in the morning to make sure that all the audio visual equipment is working correctly. That allows students to, it gives them the opportunity to spend a couple of hours in the morning before the classes actually start to go around the rooms, have a bit of a play around with audio visual equipment. It also brings them in touch with the likes of me and my team leaders and people like that. So they start to build networks. They start to get decent understanding about what sort of technology is being used in higher education sector. So that's one way of doing things. There are other things as well. I've had requests from schools where they would ask if I would be interested in taking on a student as a work placement. I've said yes. They come in for 2 weeks, experience what my team does, and then go away and write a report. So I think there are different ways in which you could get involved. I don't think higher education institutions are against having people who are studying sort of working for them.
Thank you very much. We've got another new question come in, and that's it's disappointing that postdoctoral researchers are seen as students, even by professional services staff within universities. What's the best way to break this barrier? And I think Claire has volunteered to answer this one.
So I think I'm not going to speak for the private sector industry, but I think certainly in terms of universities, we do look to, we often recruit into different roles across the organisation, people who are in those kind of roles that you mentioned there. I think it's about showing what experience you have gained that is relevant to the role, rather than focusing always on the research side of things. It's directly relevant experience, and I think most of the people who are doing those kind of research roles have a huge amount of experience that can be generalized, but I think it's about getting that through in the application process. And I do think a conversation before you walk into that kind of application and interview process is really beneficial. But I think it's really about displaying your actual skills and what potential that you've got, rather than focusing on the role that you're currently in. And I don't think that's unique to the role that you're talking about there. I think that can be anywhere, you know, coming from the private sector or the public sector. It's really about what value you can add. And I would say that you're in a unique position, that you understand the organisation well. And when we're talking about softer skills and stakeholders, which we've all mentioned, it is a huge tick in the box for me if somebody can do some of the business relationship side in an IT role, because that is one where we do struggle sometimes to get that kind of complementary mix of soft skills and technical skills. And I think if you've got that knowledge and those relationships in the organisation, I would actually say that you're probably in a very good position.
Thank you. I think we'll be drawing the webinar to a close shortly, so I'm going to ask everyone for their to sum up in 30 seconds their key takeaways from today's session, and I'll kick off first. I think the wide variety of roles and experience that you can get in a university, and also the opportunities that you get to grow and change your role while you're in a university and move into different areas that you may not have considered, I think are kind of key benefits of working in the HE sector. Kitan, your thoughts?
So for me, I think it's been very interesting to hear the rest of the panelists, my colleagues from other higher education institutions, just reinforces the belief I had that, having a career in higher education can be very rewarding. I'm also quite pleased that people are showing an interest in starting a career in higher education. And for those people, I would strongly encourage them to take the leap.
Thank you. Claire?
I think we've mentioned it a number of times. Don't be put off if you don't 100% match that job description. Get in touch or think a little bit about situations that you've been in that maybe do actually meet it. Don't take it just as a very static statement, because we can make decisions about potential when you put some relevant experience in that box. It's very difficult if you don't put anything in for us to make that jump. And I think potential for me and my colleagues, the amount of people that we recruit, because as we've said, the attitude and the ethos that they've got mixed with a bit of potential, and those are the people that tend to develop and go really far in the organisation.
Thank you. And Rob?
I think that the product that we produce is people. So I think you have to be a people person. I think that's what I would strongly advise. I'm, as I said before, I moved in the private sector many years ago into universities, and I have no regrets whatsoever. A much better working environment.
Thank you.
Oh, and sorry, I'm recruiting at the moment. I just pushed the URL onto our chat, so I'm looking for somebody in my team at the moment. So if you wouldn't mind passing that URL along, Sarah, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
I was trying to think of because I'm last, so I was trying to think of a good way to sum it up. And I guess what I'm going to go with is working at a university is a wonderful story. It takes you on a fantastic journey. You just need to work out that your character is going to be whatever the superhero is that gets you to your end goal. And whatever the thing is that you're there to rescue, be it a flower or a princess or a wonderful job that you enjoy every day that keeps you smiling even throughout the pandemic and everything else that's gone on, then education is the place to apply for. And all I can say to you is apply and tell us your story, and hopefully everything will fit together.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists today for your time and for your thoughts and help. If people watching are looking for more information, then please visit the jobs.ac.uk website, where vacancies will be advertised and more vacancies coming up soon. Hopefully, it sounds, from lots of different areas. The recording of this webinar will be available shortly on the website and on the jobs.ac.uk YouTube channel. Please share it with other people that might be interested. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.